football, soccer, cricket, baseball, rugby, sumo wrestling. Since ancient times, people have watched other people throw objects, kick objects, or wrestle. What makes humans so interested in sports? What's so appealing about it? Why would anyone bother watching overweight men just shove each other? And before you say, who cares about sports? I'll tell you that actually a lot of people do. Football, also known as soccer, has about 3.5 billion followers around the globe. Coming in second place is cricket with about 2.5 billion followers. That's like a quarter of the Earth's population. And then there's also the stereotype that women don't watch sports. 55% of American women watch American football on TV. I would imagine the stats are similar for other sports. Okay, so we get it. A lot of people watch sports, but why? In the 1990s, researchers at the University of Kansas found that strongly identifying with a team provided a sort of buffer and protection against depression and alienation, and it supported feelings of belongingness and self-worth. The study was based on their research on the school varsity basketball team. Watching sports gives us a rush of pleasure. Some fans get a dopamine rush when their team or their favorite player does really well or does well. Dopamine is a neurotransmitter that's in charge of the brain's pleasure and reward centers. It helps our emotional responses and our movement. So if our team wins or if someone scores a goal, then we get a dopamine surge. We feel good and we associate that with the sport itself. It increases testosterone and feelings of dominance. Researchers at the University of Utah and Georgia State University studied testosterone levels of World Cup viewers. They were 26 male fans between the ages of 21 and 40. They collected saliva samples before and after a Brazil versus Italy match, and they found higher testosterone levels in the team that won, Brazil, and lower testosterone levels in the team that lost, Italy. And along with this testosterone increase is an increased feeling of dominance. Oddly enough, some winning teams would have their fans riot outside of the stadium after winning the game and cause millions of dollars in property damage. Our brain thinks that we're in the game. About 1/5 of the neurons that fire in the premotor cortex when we do an action, like kick a ball, also fire when we watch someone else do that action. These brain cells are called mirror neurons, and they help us understand the actions of others, and they help build empathy. Like, have you ever felt really sad when your favorite player missed a goal or struck out? The happiness that we feel when our team wins might be like a toned down version of the happiness that the actual team feels when they win. And we might feel really sharp sadness when the members of our team lose, even though we didn't actually play the game. If you've ever noticed sports fans talk, they always say something like, "We crushed them," or "We were injured." You didn't do anything, you just sat on your couch for 2 hours. A 2008 study at the University of Rome studied mirror neurons while people watched a basketball player shoot free throws. These participants were divided into 3 groups. There were the novices, or the beginners, and then there were the expert viewers, and the athletes. The motor systems of people in all of the groups were activated. However, for novices, their motor system activated in a more general way, while players and expert watchers showed activity in the specific motor areas involved in shot taking. For the professionals, even their hand muscles perked up while watching the free throw shooters. In other words, their minds felt like they were actually playing. And now this begs the question, of all of the sports that exist, there are dozens and dozens of sports, if not hundreds. Why is soccer the most popular? Well, it has a long history, with some historians dating it back to about 3,000 years in ancient China. So from then until the 19th century, when the English developed the modern game, it's had a lot of time to grow. It's also very accessible. Literally any ball will do the trick, and you don't even need a ball. You can use a can or some bottle or some object. And then you can easily find something to mark the goal areas. It could just be like a bag or a shirt placed in like 2 places to mark the goal. And you can play on the streets, on the beach, in the park, on the grass. The terrain doesn't really affect soccer as much as it affects many other sports. Compare that to basketball, where you need a hoop in order to play, or other sports where equipment is almost necessary. Even the poor have access to soccer, which means that there are that many more people who can play, because you don't need an actual field, you don't need an actual goals set up from like a government institution, or it doesn't have to be an official park. And you can also have up to 22 people in a game, which really takes care of the issue when oh, there are too many guys to play, there's not enough space on the court, or we don't have any more positions for you to play on, and that way there are less people left out. The games are also shorter and safer than a lot of other sports. In the US, in 2009, among kids between the ages of 5 and 14, there were over 170,000 injuries in basketball games, 110,000 for softball and baseball, over 200,000 for cycling, 215,000 injuries for American football, and 88,000 injuries for soccer. Of course, this might not be the most representative sample, but the point is that you might be less likely to get injured when you play soccer. And obviously, you can't play or enjoy the game if you're injured. And if any of you follow basketball, then you know just how drastically an injury can affect a game, a series, or a career. And you know just how often they happen. Just look at last year's Eastern Conference games with the Brooklyn Nets and how James Harden and Kyrie Irving got injured, or how Derrick Rose's entire career changed because of his injuries. He was like the youngest MVP, and now he's not quite the superstar he used to be. So here's some footage of Derrick Rose playing. Notice how fast this guy is. His explosive play style. He jumps so high. The defenders just don't stand a chance. But the point is, like, the nature of the game is that you have to jump that high in order to be able to dunk. Of course, the way he landed and like the fact that he never slowed down before jumping led to his injuries is hard to disagree with. Because of his injury, he just can't play like this anymore, and it's really sad to see that. The length of time is 90 minutes, which might seem like a long time, but it's actually shorter than 2 or 3 hours that it takes to play a basketball game or a football game, American football. Soccer might not be as complicated to learn as other sports, and it's also been associated with one's pride in their country. So there aren't many weird rules to like trip people up, and the World Cups have a lot to do with the success of these games. Like if you see the statistics and the numbers for how many people in a country watch their team play at the World Cup, like the statistics are staggering. Like there's so many people who watch. Like it's just, you associate your national team with your own pride and your own nation. Like the 2014 World Cup reached 3.2 billion people and 1 billion viewers watched the final game. It's mind-blowing to think that more than a quarter of the world's population is watching a single game. Maybe I'll start watching soccer. That's all for today.